Let's talk a little bit about universal design and what that means. As I do this, first what I'd like for you to do is just raise your hand as high as you can for me. Okay, now look around the room and watch this. Raise it another inch. Watch this again. Raise it as high as you can. Oh, thank you, Mr. Mundorf. Thank you. Right? Okay, thank you. Put your hands down. Interesting that I asked you to raise your hand as high as you could, and you had a certain expectation about what that was. And this morning, what I'm going to ask you to do is to kind of put your work aside. Put your daily job and your challenges and where we're currently at, and let's have an adult beverage, an orange juice, and let's talk a little bit about where are we as a profession. What does UDL mean to us, and where are we going with it? What do we have to look forward to in the next 3, 5, 10 years in terms of what's going to happen in education? We talk about this in terms of paradigms. And so paradigms means that what we currently understand shifts so radically that it just changes everything about the way we think of things. And what I would present to you today is that I think education is about ready to hit a paradigm shift so that if you are going to be teaching for another 10 years, what education will look like in 10 years from now will be totally different than what you understand education to be today. And UDL is the heart of this. In fact, UDL is such the core of this that Secretary of Education Arne Duncan wrote a letter to Congress just a few months ago and said, the next 10 years of education reform is based on UDL and STEM. And so UDL and STEM have become the pillars embedded within the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And so at a national level, UDL is not just another trend. There is some significant research, and that can be found at CAST.org. And CAST.org is an independent organization that is doing research towards UDL. And so important for you to know as educators that, yes, this is research sound pedagogy, and it makes a whole lot of sense. And so David Rose is primary author and kind of architect for this, and really has done some remarkable things. So I want to talk a little bit about what is UDL, how does it apply to us, and what do we have to look forward to in the future with it. And so first thing I'd like for you to do is just find somebody next to you real quick. Okay, and you need to be pairs. So if you can be 3 if you'd like. So if you guys want to turn around together, you can. I want you to observe your partner's eyes when you ask a question, okay? And the first eye movement that your partner will make is really the most critical, okay? So when you ask a question, make sure that you're looking at their eyes so that you can see their eye movement. It's either going to move up, or it's going to move sideways, or it's going to move down. And so note that so that you can tell them what it is. Now, the question has to be something where they process. They have to think. So if you ask them what their wife or husband's name, hopefully they know the answer to that, right? So it's something that they got to go into their mind and think about. So maybe a little harder question than what's your birthday or something of that nature, where you would readily know those answers. Okay, and then switch and have your and have the other conversation. Go ahead and do that. So does everybody know their eye movement? Up, sideways, or down? Okay. Go ahead and stand up for me. Everybody stand up. Little aerobic exercise. If your eyes went up, go ahead and have a seat. Okay, about 2/3 of you, your eyes went up. Okay, if your eyes went down, go ahead and have a seat. Okay, folks, this is significant. Okay, if your eyes went side to side, you're standing, right? So what does this all mean? Well, and you may go ahead and have a seat. This is a test about where in your brain you're searching for information. Okay, so this is your primary source. For those of you whose eyes went up, you're visual learners. Okay? 60% of the population are going to be visual learners. If your eyes went down, you're a kinesthetic learner. You're looking in those physical aspects of your brain. 30% of the population, 35% of the population is going to be kinesthetic learners. 60 and 35 is? 95. Good job. Math this early in the morning. So, all right. You guys are a good group. So that means 5% of the population are auditory learners, right? So what that tells us about education is that 1 out of 20 students have strengths in the auditory mode of receiving information. That's paradigm shift, right? So if we're doing nothing but lecturing, really we're talking to strengths of 1 out of 20 kids. And so education must be visual, it must be kinesthetic, and it must be auditory. The fact that 1 out of 20 strength really also speaks to education that this is a deficit. And so it's something that we have to specifically target and specifically teach about how to listen and how to interact with information so that we can receive, because primarily our world is based on receptive language through auditory processing, right? When we add in disabilities to this equation, if we have a student who is visually oriented, brain-wired for visual, but then we have visual processing disorders, we have some real significant challenges that we have to work through as educators. And so this bimodal world is really, really important. And so universal design talks about 3 neural networks in the brain. Do I have a slide on this, John? No, okay. Our internet issues this morning, but CAST.org has these 3 neural network pictures of the brain. How many are familiar with CAST and UDL? Okay, so I'm not going to go into the elementary level of that. We're just really going to kind of talk about what does this mean for us. But the recognition network, how do we manipulate text so that students can understand or perceive what we're trying to do, and what do they do with that, the strategic network? How do they use that information? How do they process it? How do they attack it? Do they use highlighting? Do they use note-taking? All of those kind of things about how to access information and manipulate information. And then there's an effective network. How high will you raise your hand? And this morning, what I'm wondering is, will you stretch a little bit with me? Will you go a little bit higher? Will you go a little bit deeper? Will you determine after this meeting to raise your hand a little bit higher? Or will you stand on top of your chair? The reality is we could have stood on top of the table, because raise your hand as high as you could. Really, it's a motivation, right? Some of you are like, all right, here I am. I'm here at 7:30 in the morning. What else do you want from me? So motivation in education really has significant factors in terms of how much effort will children apply towards achieving the tasks that we lay before them. And do they perceive this as being an important skill? Because if they don't perceive it as being real or authentic or important, then their effort level is going to be very minimal. So those are the key factors with UDL. It's the recognition network, it's the strategic network, and it's the universal, and it's the effective network. And as educators, then, what we have to do is begin looking at our classroom that when children are struggling, it's one of those 3 things that are broke down. And so all the other alphabet soups are really pretty clear and pretty easy for us to understand. Our differentiated instruction and RTI and MTSS and ELL and EDD and ABCD and OMG and what the, wow. But if we look at it through the lens of UDL, it becomes real simple. This kid's either struggling with recognizing the knowledge, processing the knowledge, or engaging with it, okay? And if we design classrooms and schools to be flexible in meeting those needs, then then we have a better shot at being able to make expert learners for all of our students. You have a bag of nails, and response to intervention, or MTSS as it's now being called, is certainly at the forefront of what educators are thinking about. So feel free to steal this activity and go back and bring it back to your schools. It's really based on clear, explicit instruction and multi-levels of support as you need that. So let me start off this morning by giving you clear, explicit instructions, and that is what this activity is all about. Okay, so our goal this morning, my leading question is, how many nails can we balance on the top of the nail head? Okay, and so let me define some definitions for you. Okay, when I speak about a nail, I'm talking about the galvanized metal piece that's sticking inside your wood. Okay, now this is another form of nail, but this is not the nail that I'm talking about. So you can't use these nails to balance the other nails. Okay. Number two, you can't use technology to solve this problem. Right? Number three, when I say balance, what I mean by balance is that the nails are not touching anything else. Okay? Through gravitational pull, they are sitting on top of the nail head. Okay? And when I say nail head, I don't mean the base of this. Okay? I don't mean the base of this. I mean the flat piece on top. Okay? So your goal is to see how many nails you can sit on top of the nail head. All right? Now, of course, I need to let you know what my expectations are, so I've developed a rubric for you. And so the rubric is, if you do 8 nails on the top of your nail head, you're going to get an A for this activity. Okay? 6, B, 4, C, 2, you're going to get a D. Obviously, less than 2, we're not going to be happy. But if you get a D or an F, don't worry about it. We have a remedial session right after breakfast. So we'll take care of you, okay? Of course, we can have you stay in for lunch or whatever else we need to do because you need extra support, and we'll make you feel good about that, all right? Any questions about balance or nails or what the objects are that you're working with? Okay, great. Let's go ahead. Go ahead. As teacher mode, this is what I'm thinking. Obviously, there's behaviors going on in this classroom. Immediately, some people now are starting to lean back, and it's like, okay, this was fun for about a minute, but I'm done. So obviously, you need some RTI behavior intervention here. So let me do some positive behavior support. Come on, guys. I know you can do this. Look this. Come on, right? Do you need me to jump on? Come on. I'll give you a sticker. I will give you 10 stickers. You can have lunch with me. What do I need to do for you to get this done? Notice how they have so eloquently now abandoned my original instructions. It's like, okay, there's got to be a different way. Like, the teacher got it wrong. There's no way that we can balance nails on top of the nail head. So let's use a book, right? So now we're starting to include things. I've had people do gum and like take out nail polish and do and rubber bands. It's like, kids they're getting creative. We're getting desperate. Okay, you have failed RTI. Folks, you have failed RTI, both behaviorally, I've motivated you, I've done all sorts of things. We need to go to ESE. And does anybody know what the number one accommodation for ESE is? Yeah, more time on task. So, folks, you got 20 more minutes. Just go ahead and take care of that. Come on up here, Lori. I need you to hold this for me. So. Yes, you really do. You are now our special ed student of the day. So aren't you happy that we've labeled you this? Yes. So how many want another 20 minutes to do this task? No. So here's how we do this, okay? Now, hopefully you have insurance, Roger? Yeah, because I don't want to impale you. So just hold steady for just a second. Here's the way this works. If I put a nail down, with the point pointing towards me, I can crisscross my nails in this manner, okay? And then eventually what I will do is I will put another nail on top, okay, that will hold those nails in place. And I will very carefully, this is where it gets dangerous, very carefully hold those together until they're up. And now what I need you to do is hold that way out in front of you. And okay, good. You don't have open toes. So, and then we're going to set that there. Now that's kind of heavy. So you got that, right? And so my ESE kid, with a little bit of support. I'm going to move this. Whoops. There we go. There's the toe. There it is. So my ESE kid just got an A. Let's give her a hand. All right. So thank you, folks. This is a great demonstration for staff development because what was the problem here? In terms of UDL?
No prior knowledge.
No prior knowledge, right? Recognition network. It was a recognition network error. Once you saw the pattern, Once you understood how it worked, you were instantly be able to say, oh, okay, I can do this now. I see the pattern, right? How about strategy? You were engaged in strategies. How many strategies did you employ, right? But then your strategies failed and you had nothing else to go on. So we had some strategic breakdown. What did that affect? Yeah, it affected motivation, right? So you see in education how if we can identify what the root cause in terms of UDL is, then all those other factors can be resolved very easily, right? And so special ed has really been poised to really give direction to the next generation of pedagogy and style, because what David Rose originally said and started this whole thing was the answer isn't in the middle of the bell curve. The answer's in the margins. If we can figure out how to get kids in the margins to be successful, then it's very easy for us to work towards the middle and solve those issues. So what does NAIL stand for? It's an acronym, because we're special ed. So NAILS is never assume impossibilities. Learn strategies. When you see kids struggling, understand where they're struggling, why they're struggling, and look for those strategic things that can take care of or resolve those issues. This morning, I think it's in this pocket, the question that I have for you is who wants 10 bucks? Who wants 10 bucks? Who wants 10 bucks?
I do.
Thank you. You're welcome. So, no, go ahead and have a seat. Thank you. Folks, it's that motivation. Okay, it's that effective network.
Yeah.
Right? We have looked at the problem through the same lens for so long that we have been conditioned to believe that the way we do education right now is the way it's always going to be. And what I'm telling you is that now is the time that we have to begin to break down our past traditions and start thinking outside the box. She's been conditioned that in classrooms, you raise your hand and you do only what the teacher asks you to do. And if you take a chance or if you do something outside of the box, you're scolded for that. And it's stifling what we're doing, right? And it's stifling motivation. And kids know this way, way better than what teachers understand this. I go in 26 schools. My partner, Sherry Wiseman, goes in the other 26 schools. And I am bored to tears. Bored, crazy bored when I go into some of these classrooms. At the heart of this is motivation. What are we doing to engage kids and breaking down those barriers? So David Rose and the folks at CAST talk about this educational research that they've been doing. And one of the things that they say is, every classroom in America is really being challenged by two things, and that is a huge diversity of students that are coming into our classroom. We're not a homogeneous society anymore. When you say you teach fifth grade, like John teaches fifth grade, do you really teach just fifth? I mean, what grade levels do you have in your classroom, John?
Ranging from second grade to ninth grade reading level.
Okay, so he teaches seventh grade level abilities in his classroom, right? So that wasn't true 20, 30 years ago. Collier, most of you know us for our beautiful white sandy beaches and the 2 Ritz-Carltons and the things that we show on TV. But in reality, what we have in Collier County is 60% of our students going home to homes that were English as a second language. So a huge population of migrants in our farming communities. The largest migrant population east of the Mississippi River. We have more millionaires per capita. We also have significant poverty. 65% of our kids are on free or reduced lunch. So we also have a K-12 school with 400 kids out in the middle of the Everglades. And when you go outside, you literally have 45 mosquitoes jumping on you. And so some real dichotomies, of what's going on in our district. So how do you respond to this kind of diversity and challenges? And so I don't think that's unusual. I think that's what's going on in American education. The second thing that they say is that we have standards and rigorous accountability and those issues that are putting pressure on every single teacher in this country. And so how do we deal with these two major challenges? And so they say technology has the ability and flexibility to be able to address both of those needs. But let's talk about this technology thing, because technology is really, really important. And understanding something called Moore's Law. What can we expect to happen in our world in the next 3 years? And so if we go back 100 years and we look at how does technology grow, Moore's Law is something that you really need to understand if you're going to see the future. If you want to see 3 years from now, you have to understand Moore's Law, right? And what Moore's Law explains is that in 50 different categories, technology is growing in exponential growth in relationship to cost, which cost is decreasing at exponential rate. Okay? So what does that mean? Well, that means this. If you took a penny and put it on every single day of a calendar, at the end of the month, how much money would you have? You'd have 30 cents. Maybe 28 if it's February. Maybe it's 31 if it's January, March, May, July, August, October, et cetera. So what happens is, the first starting points of technology, it almost seems like we're linear, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But really, if you look at the data on technology, it's growing exponentially, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. So if we follow that, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, so we're at 128 or so by the end of the week. How much pennies or how much money would you have at the end of a month? No, that's not quite exponential growth. Anybody want to guess how much money? 100,000? Yeah. No, just stretching. Sorry. Yeah, you ever do that? Oh, you breathe. I'm calling on you. Yes. So, it would be $2.5 million. If it's 31 days, then it's $5 million, right? Because what happens is this thing called the elbow of bend. And it happens right around here, where all of a sudden linear perception, our perception of this has been linear, right? But at the elbow of bend, technology starts shooting up this way. And so what happens is things like this. 2 years ago, I discovered, oh my gosh, we got to put an iTouch classroom. We got these new iTouches that we've got to put on the classroom. And so I go through our antiquated purchase ordering process system, which takes us months to get approved, right? And then it has to go to the board and all this stuff. And so 9 months later, I finally get the approval to implement an iTouch classroom. And a month before I'm about ready to get this signed by the board, they come out with this thing called an iPad. Have you heard of these? They're fantastic, right? And so I'm like, look, I'm sorry, we have to change this. We can't do an iTouch classroom. We have to do an iPad. And so it takes me 3 months to do this. And so now finally it's the next school year, and it's the beginning of the school year, and we get the equipment, we get it organized, and we bring it out to the kids. We've got Nanos, and we've got iPod Touches, and we've got iPads, and we walk in and we open it up, and the kids go, oh my gosh, these are the old Nanos. They don't have cameras. And I'm like, you little less, no, I didn't say that out loud. And so then, we go through October through, May, and then the kids come in the next year and they're like, oh my gosh, we got iPads in our classroom. Oh, these aren't the iPad 2s? Mr. Schulte, when are we getting the iPad 2s? Right? So the rate of change that we're seeing since PC was introduced to mobile phone to internet growth in 1998 to where we're at now, we're going to have to get on the roof to show you that iPads are calculating at 10 to the 14th power per second, which means if I take my phone out and I'm sending signals up to 3 satellites and it's calculating algorithmically where I'm located on the Earth, because it can triangulate 3 satellite signals, and I walk across the room, and it can tell me in instant time that I now have walked 10 feet. So what can this device do when it's calculating at 10 to the 15th power? And in the next 3 to 5 years, all of mobile technology and all of the costs and all of the things that we're accustomed to now is going to be 1,000 times more powerful. And so I'm not planning for the problems that we've had in the past. I'm getting excited about what is about to happen in education. What's going to happen in 3 years? Where are we going to be at in 3 years? What will education look like? It's fascinating. Folks, this is a fun time. We didn't have iPad presentations at ITA 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And this year we're talking about Switch accessible iPads, you know? So accessibility issues, those barriers in recognition, those barriers in strategy, those barriers in engaging students is now. It's today. It's possible. John's doing it. And so it really brings up this really interesting dilemma for us. Because John is a 5th grade teacher, and he's got 4 other teammates. And so if you're the 5th grade student that gets John, what's your reaction? Yes. What's the reaction of the other 4 classrooms of 120 kids? Right? And so then Apple does something like, oh, we're going to give you a free storage space so that you can build your whole curriculum online, and it's 24/7. Free. We're going to give you book builder so you can build books. Free. We're going to put it on your device. Free. And so I think next year we'll begin having conversations about how immoral is it to not give children these kind of tools. We would give them antiquated books over what's available. And if I'm in a different class other than John Mundor's, I don't think you're giving me the education that I deserve. And that brings up another moral issue, because my pay now is based on my performance with students. And if you're asking me to do surgery with a hacksaw and a chisel and a hammer, and John's classroom is gaining 30 words per minute per quarter across the board, ESE and Gen Ed classrooms. Is that right? Is that 30 words per minute?
We did about 80 words over the school year.
Okay, 80 words per minute increase in fluency over the course of October to May as a result of the project that we implemented. And if you don't give me this, and this is the tools that I need, and you're basing my pay on this, it's going to be some interesting conversation, folks. Because I know it works. Now, we don't have all of the research to prove this yet, but it's coming. And there are school districts across the country that are going to cloud technology and being able to instantly verify and identify issues and respond to those kind of things. We have districts across this country that are going to bring your own devices to one-to-one application. And the cost of these things is going down exponentially. And so I just read an article about Raspberry Pi. This is an organization over in the UK who just manufactured a computer for $25. They can now effectively create a computer for $25, you know, operating system, the whole 9 yards. So, you know, that's that exponential decrease. So I don't buy into this argument that, oh, well, some kids don't have this. If we look back at where we've been over the last 60 years, we're going to accomplish that same amount of growth in the next 10. It's absolutely a fantastic time because technology allows us to present material in recognition manners in multiple different ways. It allows us to present multiple different strategies for students to learn how to be successful. If you can't read text, that's no longer a barrier. We know strategies that can help students in those situations, and so now it's motivation, right? So go out into the vendor hall and start looking at things through new visions, through new goggles. Where will you be in 3 years? Thank you.